Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we explore the brightest ideas in human history until they start glowing in the dark. Today, we're diving into the tragic and, frankly, jaw-dropping case of Hisashi Ouchi, the unfortunate nuclear technician who received a record-breaking 17,000 millisieverts of radiation. And trust me, that's not a world record anyone wants on their resume.
Yeah, you heard that right, 17,000 millisieverts. Just let that number sink in for a second. This is the highest radiation dose a human being has ever been exposed to and lived, even for a little while. And it's the central horrifying fact of our story today. This all went down back in 1999 at a place called Tokaimura, and it proved once and for all that mixing nuclear fuel by hand is not exactly a great team-building exercise. Guiding us on this little atomic odyssey is our ever-radiant producer, FireflyHaku, who somehow keeps the show glowing without a meltdown. So let's dig in and see what actually happened on that seemingly routine day.
Now, before this accident, Hisashi Ouchi wasn't a statistic. He wasn't a cautionary tale. He was just a 35-year-old guy, a dedicated technician at a nuclear fuel processing company called JCO. From what his colleagues said, he wasn't some distant scientist in a lab coat. He was a warm, approachable guy, the kind of person who'd share a laugh and a story during a break. Just a regular person doing a highly specialized job.
And that's exactly how the day began, September 30th, 1999. For all intents and purposes, it was a completely normal Tuesday at the Tokamura plant. Ouchi and his two colleagues had a task: prepare a batch of enriched uranium fuel. It was a procedure they'd done before, in a place that was built on precision and safety protocols. But on this day, that routine was about to be shattered in the most atomic way possible. So, how did it all go so terribly wrong? Well, the team's task was supposed to be pretty straightforward: prepare a small, very specific amount of uranium for nuclear fuel. But apparently, they were under pressure to meet a deadline, and they decided to take a shortcut. This wasn't just any shortcut, though. It was a fatal deviation from a rule that was designed to prevent the very disaster that was about to unfold. And right here, you can see just how massive this mistake was. The safety limit for this particular procedure was 2.4 kilograms of uranium. They didn't just go a little bit over. No, they poured in 16 kilograms. That's nearly 7 times the limit into a tank that was completely wrong for the job. And then, to make matters so much worse, they started mixing it by hand. By doing this, they unknowingly did the one thing nuclear engineers spend their entire lives trying to prevent. They created a critical mass. This kicked off what's called a criticality accident, basically an uncontrolled, self-sustaining nuclear chain reaction. The very first sign that something was catastrophically wrong was an ominous, silent blue flash of light that just enveloped the men. And then the radiation alarms started screaming. Okay, to put that blue flash into perspective, let's look at the numbers. The annual safe limit for a radiation worker is about 20 millisieverts. A dose of 5,000 is almost guaranteed to be fatal. Ouchi, who was standing right over that tank, absorbed 17,000. This wasn't just a lethal dose, this was an amount of radiation that essentially sentenced every single cell in his body to death right then and there. Ouchi was, of course, rushed to the hospital. And the strange thing is, at first he was conscious, he could talk. Aside from some nausea, he seemed relatively okay. But on the inside, the radiation was already waging an unwinnable war on his cells. The very blueprint of his body, his DNA, had been completely shattered. So what that massive radiation dose really did was this: it just stopped his body from healing. Full stop. His chromosomes were obliterated, so his body completely lost the ability to make new cells. And what does that mean? It means his skin, his internal organs, his immune system, every single part of him was slowly but surely just disintegrating, with absolutely zero possibility of repair. The 83 days that followed were, well, they were a horrifying timeline of a total bodily collapse. Because he couldn't generate new cells, his skin literally started to shed within a week. He was losing liters of fluid right through his exposed flesh. His digestive system disintegrated, which led to massive internal bleeding that needed up to 10 blood transfusions a day. The medical team fought like hell to keep him alive, even restarting his heart after it stopped for 49 minutes on day 59, a decision they made because his family begged them to. And through all this unimaginable pain, with painkillers barely making a dent, Ouchi was conscious for much of the ordeal. At one point, he reportedly just pleaded with the medical staff, crying out, "I am not a guinea pig." His will to live was simply overwhelmed by the sheer agony of his body's complete and total collapse. But here's the thing: Ouchi wasn't the only one in that room. That single accident had sealed the fates of his two colleagues as well, and each of their outcomes was basically determined by how close they were to that terrible blue flash. The fates of these three men really became a brutal lesson in physics. Ouchi, closest to the reaction with that 17,000 MSV dose, was gone in 83 days. Masato Shinohara, who was a little further back, got 10,000 MSV. He fought for 7 long months before his body also gave out. And their supervisor, Yutaka Yokokawa, he was at his desk a few meters away. He received 3,000 MSV, a dose that would be fatal for many people, but in his case, it was, amazingly, survivable.
You know, the tragic deaths of Ouchi and Shinohara were not completely in vain. The incident was a terrifying wake-up call for Japan's entire nuclear industry. It directly led to brand new laws designed to beef up safety protocols and emergency preparedness, all to make sure that a simple shortcut taken by 3 men could never, ever lead to such a horrifying outcome again.
And this all leaves us with a really difficult question, doesn't it? The Tokumura accident wasn't some kind of technology failure. It was a failure of human procedure, of people under pressure. It's just a stark reminder that no matter how advanced our science gets, that human element is always the wild card. And it forces us to ask, when human error is basically inevitable, how safe is safe enough? It's definitely a question worth thinking about. So hit subscribe, grab your lead apron, and join us as we illuminate one of Japan's darkest science lessons with just enough sarcasm to keep the Geiger counter ticking.